features and modules, and and hence make a light version out of it, which can be really helpful. So with that, I would turn over to Michael Cups, who is the Senior Vice President Sales for OpenConnect, and let him introduce himself as well as give us some introduction about the product before we deep dive into the tool itself.
Yeah, thank you, Gurmeet. Appreciate the intro there, and we'll get started. Good to talk to some of you. We've met many of you, so it's good to talk to you guys again, and nice to meet the rest of you. Thank you for joining us today. The agenda is fairly simple. I'm just going to give a couple of perspectives on our customer base and some of the benefits they've received with our WorkiQ products, and then going to quickly hand it over to Kevin to get into the architecture as well as the capabilities of the solution. Just by point of introduction, as Gurmeet said, I'm Michael Cups, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales for OpenConnect. So most of these customers that you see on this screen, I've been heavily involved with, as is Kevin, over the years. So we kind of know what they're doing and how they're doing it pretty detailed. So happy to answer any questions. But at the root of why I wanted to show you this particular detail is that we have focused as a sales organization on the healthcare market in North America, not because our solutions of WorkiQ or our automation solution is designed for healthcare, but the problems that these institutions have in the back office is where we find a very good mix of opportunities for both our analytics solution and our automation solution. So as you can see, some of these customers, and this is just a sample of our customers, some of them use our automation solution only, some of them use our analytics solution only, and then there are several of them that combine the solutions to get even greater value of being able to determine what's happening in the workforce, as well as automating those opportunities where they can. So we've got a rich history of these customers. We've been doing automation and analytics for a number of years. Although RPA is a nice trend these days, we've been at it for well over 7 to 10 years with some of these customers. So Kevin, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to focus some of the results that we've seen our customers obtain with our WorkiQ product specifically. So this isn't including automation. This is just results that we've seen in our customer base with the WorkiQ tool itself. And at CareFirst, which is a Blue Cross plan out of Maryland, they were the first to kind of go into enrollment area, and they started in enrollment and then have moved into claims. And they've seen about a 17% increase in staff productivity after the implementation of WorkiQ. And that was in a matter of months. Like I think that we got this statistic, they were 2.5 months into the project. So it's not like it takes a long time to realize the value of WorkiQ. It's pretty immediate. The product goes in very quickly, which Kevin can address, and the results are coming back within weeks and not months. So that was CareFirst plan at Humana, which is a private plan in the U.S. They've seen very similar results in 11% increase in productivity, and their biggest challenge was at-home workers. I don't know if that's a problem that you have necessarily in your organization internally, but your customers are facing at-home initiatives, and WorkiQ is a good tool in the sense of being able to measure whether you're on-premise or you're off-premise, and the activity monitoring capabilities continue and persist wherever your employees may sit.
A quick question. This is Bobby Arnold. For both CareFirst and Humana, I got the increases in productivity on both sides, but maybe if not now, sometime in the discussion, we can talk about the how. How was that accomplished? What specifically happened that drove those increases? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Bobby. That's a great question. I think Kevin will be able to demonstrate that when we get into showing you some of the data and how these companies are recapturing basically productive time in their models. So great question, and I'll leave that to Kevin to address, and we'll circle back at the end. If you don't feel it was answered, we'll revisit that topic. And the next two, I'm sorry?
This is Maureen Raz. I just wanted to let you know I did join.
Hello, Maureen. Thank you for joining. This is Michael Cupp speaking. I'm about to hand it off to Kevin to get into the details of the product. Thanks for joining us today.
Great. Thank you.
And then the last two examples I'll mention, and again, we can go into details of these in more detail if you have more specific questions, but just the significance of the savings with the WorkiQ tool. Anthem is from a perspective, they have WorkiQ in about 2,500, about 2,500 claims adjusters that are in their organization. And they implemented it about this time last year, and within that year, they've already calculated that they have about a 7 million savings just from the activity monitoring and measurement tool alone. So that measuring how they use the FTE utilization, they've already recaptured more than paid for the tool itself. And then the last one, I want to mention Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. They were actually the pioneer with WorkiQ. They were the first customer to sign on with WorkiQ, and within the first 18 months of implementing that product, they went after how do they handle their attrition problem, because the population of their workers were aging and they were retiring. So they were looking for a solution to help increase productivity that would allow them not to have to hire after attrition, but also eliminate overtime. And they saw in the first 18 months about $6 million in savings, primarily going after that overtime number. And then as FTEs attrited through the business, they didn't have to replace them because the current staff was more productive. So again, this is a high-level snapshot of some success stories, but we do see these over and over again. It's pretty amazing to watch our customers when we do a 6-month check-in. We very often see the 10 to 20% increase in productivity, which is real dollars for those customers. So I'll pause there and hand it over to Kevin. Again, we can address some of these case studies in more detail either later on this call or at a separate call. So Kevin, I'll hand it off to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Okay, I'm going to talk real quickly about the architecture, because it's important to understand how this product works when you start seeing the reports and the user interface. So WorkiQ is a server-based product, but it uses a series of data collectors to collect the data in real time. For example, on desktops, there's a small agent that's installed on each user's desktop, and it literally sees everything the user is doing, and it sends that information in the form of events to WorkiQ in real time. WorkiQ then processes those events in real time. We also can sit on a Citrix server and capture the activity that users are doing there, and we can sit on the network and capture network activities such as mainframe communications. And if a user is sitting on a desktop, they have Citrix and they have mainframe, we can tie all of that together in a single timeline from the time the user logs in until they log out. So you can see every application they accessed, how long they spent in the application, as well as idle time when they're not doing anything. And then you can categorize those applications as productive or non-productive, and then you can look at categories and see how much productive time are they spending each day, how much non-productive time, and so forth.
Do you also have experience of having worked in a virtualized environment like VMware?
Yes. Yeah, we work in all those environments. So if users are using a virtual machine to access, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Running applications in a virtual machine? Yes. So our desktop agent would sit in that environment and capture what they're doing there.
Hey, Kevin, Bob Pinchy here. One question while we're talking environments. We have a number of clients, fairly large clients, that are working in Chrome OS. Probably maybe not supported now, but is that on your roadmap at all?
So they're just using like the Chromebooks?
Yeah, or using the Chrome operating system, like Chromebooks or PCs that are running Chrome.
Yeah, our agent right now just runs on Windows.
Okay.
But that's something we could look into.
Okay, it's not on your current roadmap, though. Okay, just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, however, whatever they're connecting to, there's a chance we could collect the data from there. We just need to get more information about what they're doing.
Okay.
So in this demo, I'm a manager and I have 4 groups that report to me. So this is very secure. You can only see data that you're allowed to see based on the hierarchy of the organization. So Because I support 4 different groups, I can only see data associated with those 4 groups. But if I'm a manager of managers, then I can see all the groups that all of my managers can see. Or if I'm an individual employee and nobody reports to me, I can only see my data. So it's very secure from that environment. What I'm showing you right now is the manager dashboard. This is a standard report that's there out of the box. And you can see at the very top, it's showing all my groups, how many users are in my groups, how many are currently logged in, how many are active, and how many are idle. We also have this WorkiQ index that is sort of it shows the productivity of the users. And so this shows it for all of my users. Over on the left, we have menus, and again, that's based on my roles. So if I'm an administrator, I'll see the administration menus. If I'm a manager, I'll just see manager reports and so forth. I'm going to hide that left-hand side so we have a little more real estate to work with. So now I have my individual groups as well, and you can see the users in each group and this WorkiQ index. And notice that 6.8 is pretty low. In fact, what a lot of our customers do, a question came up about how they see the improvements. One thing some of our customers do is they have they determine in an 8-hour day how much of that time should be considered productive time. And they tell their users that, you know, we expect 6.8 hours or 7 hours or whatever that number is for that organization. And then they share the reports with users and show them that we are actually monitoring this. And it immediately changes user behavior. But they're not Big Brother. And what they tell them up front is, we don't care what you do. If you're getting 6.8 hours, then we're not even going to look at this data. All we care about is that 6.8 hours. And we have customers that allow their users to watch Netflix movies during their break time and do whatever they want. They go to Facebook and, you know, their network is open. As long as they get that 6.8 hours, then nobody cares. And what happens is that the behavior of those users change immediately, and they actually start getting competitive with their other peers when they start seeing the reports and they start comparing with other people, and they get the competitive juices going. And I'll show you some reports that help with that. So now I'm a manager and I see this Arizona department is lower than everybody else, so they're kind of, you know, messing up our WorkiQ index. So I'm going to drill in and look at this. So now I see all the users under this department, and I can see their productive time. That's the green and yellow and red. And there are a couple down here that are impacting that WorkiQ index. But I can also see their status in real time. We see Mary Blake hasn't logged in today at all. We see when the last login time was. We see the current application that they're in. And if they're in a process, it'll show here and which process they're in. You can see it just updated. So if I want to get more information, Felicity is not doing too well today. So I can click on this and I can get a little more detail about what she's doing. So this is her idle time. And she's spending a lot of time in this focus application that we've marked as a non-productive application. So maybe she's using an old application that's been deprecated and she isn't aware of it. And then we also see the applications she's in that are considered productive applications. If we need more detail than that, we can actually click on her name and we can see all of the events in reverse order. So this is the last event we saw off her desktop. And then you can see the series of events down here and how much time is associated with them and when the event was sent. So you can get a lot of detail in here. But you don't want to have to sit here and monitor each individual employee. You really want to start at a high level, which is what we did here. We saw this 7.8 and then drilled into only the one group that maybe had an issue. But there are other ways to look at this data as well. We can look at category by time. Now I want to introduce you to the filters. Over here we can set various filters. The date filter, right now it's set to today, which means we're looking at real-time information. But we can look at historically, you know, go back as far as you want. And then you can check different departments, or you can look at individual users in those departments and look at the reports that way. You can also email the reports. You can set up a schedule or just email it to yourself. I'm going to turn this on so it updates automatically. And I'm going to go ahead and hide the filter so we don't have to have that taking up real estate. So here's my report. Go ahead.
Just a quick question and hopefully you'll get into it, but I get the setting the filters, et cetera, but I'm also concerned about outliers as it relates to one long activity that skews my average and messes up my work IQ, et cetera. So is there ability to set alerts or alarms to trigger or extract easily outliers that may be affecting the average of my work IQ index?
You can drill in and see those outliers, but typically those outliers are going to work themselves out. Unless you see that same thing every single day, then it's really not an outlier at that point. But you can look at the data per month, per week, lots of different ways, and typically those outliers are going to disappear out of the data.
Okay, but it does make sense. I'm just, and again, please don't take my comments. I'm just seeking clarity and trying to learn. So my point is there any way to set a trigger that says Maureen had a great day except for these 2 activities that threw her whole day off. If I extract those 2 anomalies, she is within the work IQ index, and do that systemically versus having to manually monitor it.
Yeah, not currently. Yeah,
okay.
Not currently. Right. What you can do, however, is, so this report out of the box is a real-time report, but you can create another version of this report by copying it, and then you can apply a filter to it and say, maybe I only care about per week or per month. And so you can look at the data that way as well.
Okay.
And then those outliers don't play a role. So this is by category. We've created a couple of categories. You can see we have social media here. That would include Facebook and Twitter and all those accounts. We have administration. Administration is an important one because we find a lot of customers that have self-documentation where people actually have to go in to an Excel spreadsheet or a different application and enter the number of work items that they completed and what those work items were. Now, a workflow system can take care of that for you. So people were wondering, well, how much time are we spending on administration having to document our work? And so we've created this administration activity or category that captures that activity so you can tell how much time people are spending in administration. But if we wanted to look at, say, the non-work category, we can drill in on that and we can see all the various applications that make that up. And here's that focus application, and maybe I want to look at that and see who's accessing that. And here's Felicity. She's doing a lot of work there, and Julia. So maybe these 2 users haven't gotten the memo that this application's been deprecated. They need to start using a new web-based application. Now you know who to go talk to and solve that problem. Again, it's really not, for our customers, they're not using it as a big brother approach. They're not drilling in and spying on people. Really, the only reason you drill in on this is because you see a potential issue. And as you look at this, you may look at it once a week, you may look at it every day. You start to see the patterns. And so you'll notice if there's an outlier in there. And if you have lower level managers that manage a particular group of people, they really get to know the data really well. So that's the work categories, the applications that they're in, and the time spent. We can also look at things like productivity. And productivity really can be looked at in a couple of ways, by productive time and by actual count of work. On the left-hand side, we have the count of work. How much work did they do? Maybe their claims or enrollment or whatever it is. You're actually counting how many times they do something. And on the right-hand side, we're looking at productive time. So the green bar, the green part of the bar is productive time in minutes, and then the blue part of the bar is idle time, and the black part of the bar is non-productive time. So you can quickly see your most productive users. For example, Julia is very productive, and then we have Sean, who's not very productive at all. And you can sort of see a correlation with some of this. You can see that Sean's not productive here. He's also not productive when it comes to the actual number of items that he's working. Abigail, on the other hand, is very productive. Her productive time isn't the best, but it's decent. So, you know, there's really no correlation with her. And this is an interesting example where you may see somebody with a lot of productive time, but very low productivity. And we've seen this with customers. We actually had a particular customer where this user just wasn't meeting her numbers, and they tried to help her, and she wouldn't accept help, and they put her on a program. And about that time, we installed WorkiQ and started to monitor the users, and they saw right away that she was 98% productive every single day. So they went to her and showed her the reports, and they said, look, you're very productive on productive time, but you're not meeting your numbers. Clearly we have a problem. And then she finally broke down and said, yes, I need help, but I'm afraid to ask for help. So they assigned her a mentor, and now she's one of their top employees. Without WorkiQ, they wouldn't have known that she had all that productive time, and she probably wouldn't be working there today. You can also look at this data just purely from a standard perspective. So you have a standard for each process, and people need to meet that standard. So throughout the day, you can monitor this and see how people are doing against that standard. You can see Abigail has met the standard already, and then we have others that you can sort of tell if they're going to meet the standard. And you know, if I'm a manager of Brandon and I see every day that he's just not meeting the standard, then you know, I can try to fix that.
So Kevin, is this standard, is this a target, if you like, that we expect employees to meet?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
And it's configurable, right?
Completely configurable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And as a manager, I don't want to look at individual reports and kind of click through. I want my own custom dashboard so I can see the data that's important to me. Now, we saw this chart on the left already, and we saw this chart down in the bottom right. So all I did is I created my own custom dashboard, and I reused a couple of charts that are already available. And then there's up in the upper right, this is a different chart that you haven't seen yet, but again, it's a standard chart that's in WorkiQ, and these are processes that we've defined. And then we can drill in on them, say benefit certification, we can see the users, and this is the count of work for each user, so I can see how people are performing here. I can also see their productive time on the left here, and if I want to, I can drill in and look at the category of work just like we looked at before. Okay?
Now, what was the standard actually reflecting? I know earlier you said a lot of clients say, you know, we want 6.8 hours of productive time. What is the standard actually referencing here?
The standard is related to a process. So if you're, we'll just say claims processing, and it's a professional claim that we expect people to do 5 an hour or 100 a day or whatever that is, you can define that standard and then capture their activity while they're doing that process and do a count of how many times they successfully executed that process.
Now what if I'm handling a blend of processes? So, you know, claim types, for instance, maybe I'm medium level agent who can handle some of the simple but also medium type complexity claims. So I've got a blend of those in my queue. How does it, does it distinguish between?
Yes. So you'll define, there has to be something on the screen that we can capture to identify that process.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say it's professional claims or institutional claims. There's some identifier on there, and you can say for a professional claim, the standard is X, and for an institutional claim, it's a different standard.
Right. Okay. It's a trigger basically that says you're doing that type of claim.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you have a workflow system or an internal application where people click a button and they say, I'm starting to work this type of process, and now I'm finished working that kind of process, we can capture that activity as well and show you those reports in WorkiQ.
Okay. But it can be automated. That's the big thing, right? Because we have a tool today, but the biggest flaw in the tool is the agent has to trigger, and they often don't do it, and then they maybe start the clock somewhere in the middle of the transaction. So
Right.
the data becomes skewed and not valid. So the goal, right, is to have the automated, or the ability, I guess, or capability to automate that trigger.
Yes, as long as we can see the screen and we can identify text on the screen, then we can automatically see the start and end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We can also define sub-processes. So if you have a
Right.
process that does multiple things, we can identify each of those sub-processes the same way.
Okay, so let's stick with this claims scenario, because we're all familiar with that. So I'm sitting at my desktop, and I go to my inbox where all the tasks are displayed. I click on a task which is a claim of a certain type. So that would initiate that high-level process. But then as I'm working that claim and I need to, open up a document and read that document and get some data from it, I could define that as a sub-process within that task, and it would be reported out both, how much time I spent doing this specific sub-process or task within the greater task, as well as, still capturing the overall end-to-end, right? That's what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, yes. That's perfect.
So how about getting down to the specific field level? I had to copy and paste information from this app to that app. Could I capture that information?
You can capture field information at the start or the end of a process or sub-process.
Okay.
And then you can use that as part of your analysis.
Right. So and is there the ability, were you going to show us how you define a process and a sub-process? Is that going to be part of this demo?
I wasn't going to show that to you, but I can bring that up if you like.
Yes, please.
Yep, I would think
Okay.
Esther would be very
That'd be
interested.
helpful.
Yep, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's where the rubber hits the road.
Exactly.
That's right.
And
So
then
there's
on
a
top
piece
of that,
of this.
Kevin, or just one other thing, you talk about seeing the start and end of a process. And is it able to tell the process is complete, so therefore that was fully completed, or is there additional integration required to know that that claim was adjudicated or whatever it might be?
It's just the data on the screen. So at the very end of the process, if there's some indicator that says the claim was finalized, for example, or routed, or whatever the message is that you're looking for.
Like a submission button, if that's executed, or a note in the CRM, could those be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Those could be identified.
Yeah, exactly what you said. It's a trigger, and you define that trigger. It can be clicking a button on a particular screen, or it could be a combination of fields and a button.
A disposition code, right? Could be also, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or a location or anything.
But it has to be something visible on the screen for it to know that it's done.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
And as I define these processes, I'm assuming this all occurs server side. So I update this process in my library of processes, and once I say, yep, it's done, go live, that would automatically update all the desktops on which this WorkiQ is functioning, and in the new process and new definitions would be started to collect immediately? What's that process to deploy it? Yes, that was a better question. How do you deploy it from definition to production? Right.
That's an excellent question. So what you do is you create a configuration. And now one piece I won't be able to show you is actually the tool where you define those triggers.
Yeah.
I'm just not set up to show you that. I can go in and show you once the triggers are defined how you define a process.
So where can a business person go in and change those triggers, or does it need to be coded through, someone with coding capability?
No, there's no programming required.
Okay.
It's really just going into the screen. So you have to collect the screens, which you can actually turn recording on for an individual user, and as they're working, it will download the screens that they're working on.
For the
flow.
And
you can use those, exactly. Okay. And then you can use those as your to configure your triggers. Okay. And it's really just clicking on the right things and giving it a trigger name, and whether you want it on an open event or a close event, or those types of things. So there's some training that would have to be done, but it's definitely designed for a user, a business user, to manage.
Oh, that's good. And how long is the training? How long is the training?
The training for that is, I think, a couple of days for that particular piece.
Okay.
It's
so
not a lot of training.
Not huge. Okay, cool. Thank you.
And half of that is testing and, playing around with it.
Yep, that's good. Playing is always good.
Yes. Okay, so let me switch gears a little bit, unless people have more questions about this.
Just had one, Kevin, the productive time. How is it actually measured? I mean, is it is it the time somebody's on the screen? Just curious how you actually measure that.
It's a great point. Let me explain this in a little more detail. So let's say you have Microsoft Word, and you define that as a productive application. Mm-hmm. When you start Microsoft Word or you make it active, if you think about it, Windows only allows one window to be active at any time. Mm-hmm. So a user actually clicks in it to do work. That triggers the event to say, I'm now in Word. Now, let's say they don't touch their mouse or keyboard for 5 minutes, or whatever you have set for idle time. Then an event is sent to say, this user's idle. And so now they're in a state of idle. Then they go click on Word again, or they move their mouse, and Word is the active application. We now see that they're in Word. So we keep track of all of that, so we know how much time they're actually spending in each application. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I get it generally. So so I guess you can't cheat the system easily there, unless you sit on one page and move your mouse a lot.
Yeah, we've had people try where they actually had something that would click a button every minute, but what you see in the data is you see an event every single minute over and over and over and over again, and that sort of raises a red flag to say, the user's just sitting there clicking the button, or they're doing something. Come to find out they were on their phone texting, and they're just hitting the button with their finger every minute or so.
Do you get a report as a manager that says, it's kind of like if you think of a switch report with short calls, do you get like some kind of alert that says Maureen, is doing this 1 minute, dance, and would that come through?
Don't have that.
Okay.
But that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, so I don't have to go through each one, right? That would be a flag, because technically, could I still look like I'm productive for 6.8 hours? And you know, you made the comment earlier, if I'm in that 6.8 hours, I'm not looking at the data. So certainly what we find, right, is people will figure out ways to beat the system. Most people are honest, but there will be some who will not, you know, so.
Yeah. So I have two answers to that. One is that you really want to tie productive time and productivity together. So
Okay.
they can cheat their productive time if they really want to work at it, which I always have to ask the question, if you're working that hard to get out of work, why don't you just do the work?
Yeah, amen.
But then the other is that once these users see the reports, and I highly recommend you share the reports with them, and you can do that just by emailing them once a week. Once they see the reports, I guarantee you that their behavior is going to change. And if they get the reports every week, then they're going to start getting competitive with their other peers. And we see it throughout all of our customers.
So you're saying blend the, or look at both the productivity or productive time as well as productivity. Is that what you said? And that's number of cases handled, for instance, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that can be, I'm sure you're measuring that today, and it can be what you're measuring today and how you're measuring.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that through WorkiQ. In fact, most of our customers only use WorkiQ to give them productive, non-productive time. And they're still getting huge cost savings. Again, it comes back to that once employees see the reports, their behavior changes.
And can you, just a question, I guess, you know, on a switch, you're able to do aux codes, like, you know, an agent enters aux codes for different activities. Like if I need to go do research, let's say, or I'm going to do a training, I put in an aux code. Can the system also be set up in such a way that in the back office environment, they could enter aux codes and that could be trapped by aux code number?
Yeah, the way we handle that today, you're talking about if they're not at their desktop at all, right? They're in a training class or something like that.
Well, they could be at their desktop, but you know, they need to kind of be identified as a separate code for maybe they're doing like an e-learning module, or often it could be like research for, you know, for a particular topic that maybe they're presenting on or something.
Okay. We don't currently have the ability for them to enter like an aux code to say, now I'm going to be doing this type of work. We can capture those processes, however, and then identify it that way.
Okay. Okay.
But if you did bring up an interesting issue though. If they're not at their desk, how do you get that time? Maybe they're in a training class, for example.
Right.
So in the way we handle that is there's an option you can turn on. It's called an idle tracker. And what will happen is they'll be idle for a period of time, and the idle tracker will pop up, and then they can select why they were idle. So they can say, I was in training for 2 hours or whatever that is.
Oh,
and
okay.
that will track why they were idle.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Okay.
That would be from a predetermined list of options.
Drop
I mean,
downs.
we would set. Okay. It'd be okay. Cool.
Like coaching
Correct,
and development, training, usually team meeting, those kinds of things, right?
Exactly.
Hey, Kevin.
Okay.
Has anyone ever taken a feed from WorkiQ and fed it into a workforce management system to do schedule adherence? Do you know about that?
No. But the data that we store is just standard relational data. But if you give me a little more information on what you're looking for, I can probably tell whether that would be doable or not.
So in workforce management, the idea is that you may want to schedule agents to be doing things at certain times. Usually in back office, a lot of companies may decide not to bother because they just work on the basis of if you hit your numbers for number of cases, whatever, that's fine. But there's a new kind of thought that if you schedule them to do work at certain times, then you can, work out when the queues are busiest. So you can still do the same kind of scheduling you would do with voice-based work, where you know that there could be busy periods. So the trick here is to try and get a feed out of, in this case it'd be WorkiQ. You were talking about the real-time nature of it. So in a sense, if you get that feed coming into a workforce management tool, you can see who's scheduled for tea break, who's scheduled for training, who's meant to be working, and you can see that status in real time compared to the schedule that's been put into the workforce management tool. And we call that real-time schedule adherence. I'm fairly certain you'll know of NICE real-time activity monitoring, who you must see as one of your competitors in this space. Of course, they own IEX as well, so they have that feature. But I do know that IEX will take a feed from an external database, so you may want to look into that, in fact, as something you may want to offer, or maybe you can build it into your reports here.
That's an excellent idea.
And some way to have a schedule for the agents as well.
Right. Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Bobby. I have one other question. I just want to pick up on the competitiveness part of it, which I agree with, when exposed to them, but have you talked to any of the gamification providers to embed sort of a gaming model of tokens or rewards, whatever, as part of the data that's coming out of OpenConnect?
Yeah, we've looked into gamification systems, and it's actually pretty easy to integrate what we do with a gamification system because they're looking for particular feeds for various things, and we can supply those things as well.
Yeah, that was kind of my logic as well, so thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. So I'm going to simulate that now, instead of a manager of 4 different groups, I'm now an employee, and I'm going to log into the system. And so what we're looking at now is a peer productivity report. Now, remember I said the data is very secure. I'm not allowed to see information about what other people are doing unless they report to me. So as an employee, I can't see what my peers are doing, but I can see a category called peers. And so that's what we're looking at here. We're seeing the blue line is showing the amount of work that I'm doing on average per day, and then the green line is what my peers are doing on average. And then the black, or excuse me, those are bars. The black line is the average duration per work item, and then the orange is average duration per work item for my peers. So you see, I don't see any of my peers' data. I don't see names or anything else. I just know how I'm comparing to my peers. And some days I'm doing better than others. Wow, that just changed. So what you get from this kind of a report is this is where the competitive juices start really flowing. They start seeing that, hey, my peers are doing better than me. I need to really pick it up. And you'll see that with this. And this is a report you can email out. We have customers email this type of report out once a week, maybe on a Friday, just to show how people did during the week. And then when Monday comes around, they're already ready to hit it and try to beat their peers. Any questions about that? We talked about processes a little bit, so I'm going to drill in on that somewhat. So I can, in my filter here, I can define a process. I just want to look at a particular process and a group of users, and that's what we see on the right. On the left, I actually have 3 different processes defined. And if I click on enrollment, I can see I have 3 different sub-processes defined within that enrollment group. I also have idle. So this is showing the total amount of idle time for all users in this process. And that's a really important one, because if they started the work, but in the middle of the work, they just stopped doing something, that could indicate a couple of things. So it's important to understand if there's idle time and how much, and who has it. And here you see 3 people contribute to that idle time. But you can also look at each sub-process and identify where, which sub-process is being executed the most within that process. And again, you can drill in and look at individuals and how much time each individual is spending in there. And a lot of times what you'll find is some people are struggling with a particular sub-process. Maybe, we've seen this in a lot of areas in claims where they're working a claim and they have to go to membership, and they're navigating 4 or 5 screens to get to the member information, and then navigating back to the original screen, and then come to find out all they had to do is hit 1 key and it brings up the membership screen, and they just weren't aware of that. Right? So it's a way to tell if people are struggling within a process and to help them out. Any questions about the reports?
No, it's Kester here. Are you going to be able to show us how an agent would log time, or how that works in, the case of I'm an agent and I'm doing my daily work? We've only got about 10 minutes left or so. It would be good if you are able to show us that, Kevin.
How they log their time?
Yeah, could we see like a typical snapshot of somebody doing some work and how the tool works?
This is what you're seeing is this is real-time information. And so, for example, if I go back to the dashboard, this is updating in real time. So they're not real users working, but it's a simulator that sends the same events that actually come off of a desktop when people are actually working.
So, okay, let me put the question a different way. Is there anything you can show us on a typical agent's desktop, or is it invisible to the agent, so there's nothing to show?
It's completely invisible.
Okay.
If I could, this is Michael. I'd say that the agent doesn't have to invoke anything or do anything. The gather is very powerful.
And that's even in the case of automated process, claim times, case times. Once those processes are set up, then the agent doesn't need to do anything?
Correct.
And what happens if the IT environment changes? Do you need to release an update to the process, start, stop times triggers?
If the screen changes or whatever you're using to identify that screen changes, then you have to go in and redefine that.
Okay, and is there any way to know that that's happened? Because if you think about it, somebody who's knowledgeable about setting the tool up can go do that, but they may not be the one who's looking at the reports or who's, an agent, so they're not going to know necessarily that it's changed. So is there a way the system can know that there's a problem? Is there a report that we can, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. So you're going to...
Yeah, go ahead.
You're going to see your counts be way off. Let's say the end screen changed. You're not going to see the end of the process. You're going to see the beginning of the next process, maybe. So your process counts, the counts are going to be way off. Also, your time is going to be off, and you're going to notice it right away because this is real time, and if you go in and look every day, you're going to see it. But the other part of that is making sure that you're part of the change control process. So typically what we see is our customers, they don't just make a change to the screen. They'll go through a testing of that change, and they'll notify the right people that this change is coming. And it's the same with automation. If you're going to automate a process, you want to make sure you're signed up to get the change control so that you know that these screens are changing, so you can put that in your automation so you're ready for it.
Okay. But the good news is if you don't follow the process, there is no, governing body center, that's coordinating these actions. What will happen is upon that change being rolled out, you're going to, those people monitoring these reports are going to immediately catch it, know that the processes are not terminating or taking too long or they're not being collected at all or whatever. They're going to notice that there's an error, act on it, make the change where you configure it, and it will then update all that stuff kind of in an automated fashion, right?
Yeah, and so that's an important point, Bob. Who is it that can make the changes to the process? Does it have to be someone who's highly trained, or can it be a business person who can do that?
I think Maureen asked that earlier, and it was, I believe the answer was it would be a trained business analyst type or business person that would be able to make those sorts of changes.
Okay,
right?
so it needs training. Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
yeah, a few days worth of training. It's not, right? You didn't say it was a real extensive, level. We don't need coders to do it. Was the good news, right?
Right. No programming required.
Right.
So guys, I had a question. Does it work in a social media forum where agents, I understand desktop applications and all that. Have this been used in, other products, like we have Sprinkler and all that, which are forum monitored work, and our agents, we want to measure the productivity of our agents, and when calls come in or when interactions come in and go out. Has that been used for that kind of a purpose?
So you're referring to a web-based interface?
Yeah, it's not a web, it's a forum. I think it's a web-based thing. Agents logged on into the forum, and the forum is available in the web. And, our end customers will ask questions. We want to know, when the agent takes up the question and answers that, and what is the AHT on that, what is the idle time on that, and all that.
Yeah, so web-based applications are supported as well, and we can, if you're using Internet Explorer or Chrome or something like that, we see that as an application, but also we can take the URL and map that to an application. So as an example, if you're in Internet Explorer, we'll say you're in Internet Explorer. As soon as you go to facebook.com, we'll say you're in Facebook. So you can map those as applications as well. And you can also map those web screens.
Yeah, Kevin, I think this question is a little, may require a little bit more thought. If Pitchy has the same sort of client in mind that I do, then the answer is a little tricky. We are inside a forum, so the web page header, or whatever you call it, the Chrome or Internet Explorer header, is perhaps not necessarily changing, but we are moving from one interaction to another. So what we're trying to do is capture the time spent on one interaction versus the next one. And, if possible, in fact, if for example, we do an interaction 1 and then we go back to another interaction for a different customer, which is interaction 2, and in the meanwhile, the first customer has got back, so we go back to interaction 1, we may even need to know how much time we spent with the customer in interaction 1, which might have actually happened across, 2 different sort of sets of time. And in all of this, the web page might change, may not change. I'm not entirely sure what happens there. So it's a little bit trickier than that. So I'm not sure if you've encountered something like that, but maybe we can share. We'll have to check, but maybe we can share some more information if there is approval to share that sort of information, and maybe you can take a look at it. But it'd be very interesting to see if you have a solution to that problem.
Yeah, that would be great. There are some of those applications that are just, they don't change much, and it's really difficult to find information to capture to know exactly where you are within the application. So, yeah, those are the situations where we just have to look at it and understand it to be able to understand whether we'd be able to map that or not.
Yeah, I would like to take that as a next step. And Ganesh, thanks for explaining it much better than I was trying to, because this is a real need. And someone mentioned at the beginning of the call about Microsoft. I do not know whether you're trying to solve another problem. But, you know, Ganesh, you absolutely understand where I'm coming from, and that is one of the issues we have, and we haven't solved it for the client.
Yeah, that's right, Peachy. We should probably take that one offline. There's reasons why we can't discuss it here. But let me grab you offline and I'll bring you up to speed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we are already on the top of the hour. Kevin and Michael, do you have anything else that you're going to cover as far as the demo is concerned?
No, the only thing is some people wanted to see how you start or create a process, so I was just going to show that. But other than that, there was nothing else. Okay.
So I think let's spend a couple of minutes. I do have a hard stop. I have to jump to another call. But so I'll log off. But please continue and share that detail. How do you define a process?
Okay. Yeah, and sure, just take a minute.
Yeah, Gurmeet, before you log off, just I assume I'll just connect with you and we'll figure out. So there's some open questions. And next steps, I'll just coordinate with you, or is there somebody else I should coordinate with?
Yeah, just send, so everyone on the call, if you have any other questions, just send the questions to me or Bob, and we would loop in Kevin as well as Michael. And likewise for you, Michael and Kevin, whatever notes you are taking on this particular call, if you want to send some explanation, send it to us and we'll circulate it internally.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
So real quickly, I'll just take a couple of minutes here. This is how you define a process. You can either define a start panel, so these are the various screens that we've captured, or you can define a start trigger. And a trigger is defined by designing that panel, going into that panel, identifying the characteristics of it, and then giving it a trigger name. And you can use multiple triggers in this as well. And then you can also define the start attributes, which are fields that you're capturing on that screen, so that you can look at, in your analysis, you can look at the process type or a claim number or whatever is important to you in the analysis. And then you also do the same for the end. It's an end panel or it's an end trigger. And then you can also define attributes that you're capturing at the end of the process. And then the specification lets you define your standards. So this one is saying 5 of these, 5 minutes per unit is what the standard is. You have a lot of different options here. It's units per day, units per hour, and so forth.
Okay, so
kind of
one of the key questions I have is, can this be done, on the desktop where these applications are running on a Citrix, receiver, or or some other Citrix app that's deployed on that desktop? Or must it sit inside the Citrix environment on the server itself?
Yeah, in order to capture the actual applications they're accessing, it needs to be on the Citrix server.
Okay.
However, we do see the Citrix application, the client application, as an application. So we know how much time they're spending in Citrix. So if you consider everything they're doing in Citrix to be productive time, then we're going to show that as productive time.
So the same thing would be true for VMware?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Because many of our agents, what they'll do is they'll log in, and part of their login process, they'll open up their community application, which they use to communicate with other agents within our organization and get training and coaching and get news and alerts and all that stuff. And then they'll log in the Citrix or VMware what the client's hosting to do their actual work. So the majority of their work is may be performed in that environment and not done on the local desktop.
Right.
Okay, so you would only be able to see, I launched the Citrix Zen app or whichever one's being deployed. That's all you would know from the local desktop.
Correct, but we're still capturing idle time, productive, non-productive time. So anything outside of that Citrix app, if they're bringing up a browser and going to Facebook or anything like that, we'll capture all of that.
Understood. Okay.
And I'll tell you, just from experience with our customers, they get a huge amount of value right up front just by looking at productive, non-productive time.
Yeah, understood. Okay. But to get really detailed, process metrics, we would need to deploy this inside the Citrix environment on the client's infrastructure and then link that together, right? Somehow.
Correct, because we don't really see anything in that Citrix viewer. It's really an image, basically.
Right. Okay.
Were there other questions?
This is Maureen. Just one question around piloting and what your view is on that time frame wise to set up an effective pilot and to monitor the change.
Yeah, pilot, we can do a 1-week pilot, install it, turn it on for typically people will do it for a few users, 5, 10, something like that. And then you don't tell the users that they're being monitored. You get a baseline, and then after maybe a week of that, you share the reports with the users, and then you see what the change is.
Right.
And that's going to tell you your potential cost savings.
And so overall, are you looking at from start to finish? Because you still have to set up, right, the tool with the process information.
Correct.
So
Yep.
is it typically like about a month kind of exercise, or?
It could be 2 to 3 weeks. We can do all the setup remotely, and that doesn't take much to set up. It's installing some server software and then deploying the agent out to a few desktops and turning it on. And there's a little bit of configuration, but that doesn't take long at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. And
Yes.
I think we have some. Was there a question?
Sorry, it might be I unmuted myself because I thought we were ending. I just want to say thank you for your time and look forward. Yeah, we look forward to next steps here, Michael and Kevin. I'd like to actually put this in and see how it works somewhere.
I've got a request. Possible to see some case studies that you have for any of the clients you mentioned at the front of the deck, the meeting today?
Yeah. We can provide some of that data. We don't have it in public-facing environment, so again, this would be NDA information. But yeah, we can share that with you, yes, sir.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Very useful.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.